Today I'll be reviewing a game that came out a few months ago. I'm so sorry about that, but we're talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake. Let's get started, shall we?
Hey, Soldier Boy.
Tifa.
What?
As with all my reviews, I always like to do three things. Talk about the story briefly, go over the highlights and the shortcomings. Now, for those who are still kind of worried about story spoilers and all that sort of thing, I will warn you when we really get into it, but if you don't want to be spoiled on anything at all, wait until you've actually beaten the game yourself, if you have purchased it or are playing it currently, and then you can come back to this video, okay? I don't want to ruin it for anybody. I just want to make sure to get that out there right away. Let's go! Final Fantasy VII Remake puts you in the boots of one Cloud Strife, a blonde, spiky-haired mercenary who acts as our main protagonist as you get hired by a bunch of eco-terrorists to destroy the evil Shinra Electric Company. And that's pretty much the basic thing you need to know about the game. Alright, let's start as we always do with the highlights. This game has got a lot going for it. The presentation, for the most part, especially in the beginning of the game, I think a little bit towards the midpoint, and the ending are excellent. Like, it really is, it's so cool, because the story not only holds up over from the game that came out like 20 plus years ago, but it also does a good job of focusing in on smaller characters. I'm looking at you, Jessie, who didn't get as much time in the previous one, and fleshing her out in some cool ways. I really enjoy that sort of thing. If you're going to remake a game, I think why not kind of expand on some aspects that might be lacking in the original, and that's one thing they do really well here. All the voice acting and the character models for our main protagonists, it all sounds and looks so good. They all are just fantastic. It gives me a little bit of the Advent Children vibes, a smidge, which is a high compliment coming from me. It's high praise because I do enjoy that film. And they all look wonderful. Like, it's such a great way to modernize how those characters would look and sound for the most part. And I really have no complaints where they're concerned. Along with sounding good, the music for this game is incredible. It's one of my favorite scores maybe in a long time, and Final Fantasy has never been shy about having good musical scores, but hearing these old songs remastered, and we've heard them remastered a few times before, it just, man, they really nailed it with this one. You could tell that they spared no expense when it came to that sort of thing. The combat's kind of a big change-up, but I consider it to be a highlight myself just because I think it mixes the real-time stuff that you get in Final Fantasy 15 with more of the turn-style-based version of Final Fantasy 7 that most people are familiar with. So basically what happens is you'll get into fights, you can switch from different character to character, kind of depending on who you want to play with, and various attacks will build up your ATB gauge, and normally you only get 2 of these, but you have to fill those up to at least 1 to use a special move, use an item, use a spell, that sort of thing. So there's this kind of interesting, complex variety to how encounters can go down if you're kind of utilizing the system in fun ways, insofar as when you're using summons, which you get later on, you can actually use the ATB gauges of other party members that have been boosted up over time to use the summon special abilities, because the only way to do that is to actually get like 2 of those ATB gauges for some of them, or at least 1 of them filled, and if you just summon to summon, you might have used your 2 ATB gauges, so you have to switch to somebody else and they get to use that special move or whatever else. Or you can actually control characters from a distance, like if you're on Cloud, you can kind of slow down time almost, pick your moves, but then also pick moves for your other party members to do, which is really fun too. So the combat can feel really super satisfying, and I have to do a little kind of nod to Cloud's Punisher mode, which basically puts him in its like kind of auto counter stance, and it's so good and so gratifying to use it against characters who might otherwise be a problem as a melee character, because you're basically trying to obviously do damage to them, but fill up a stagger gauge that each character has, and depending on if they're weak to those type of melee attacks or like various spells and things like that too, you fill that up, and then they get staggered for a little bit, and then you get to do like 160% damage on top of it. So definitely different than what people are used to for the turnstile-based version of Final Fantasy VII in the past, but I think it's really fun, and once you get good at it, you can really have a fun time, kind of like flying in and out, and it's so stylish and cinematic. And again, kind of slowing down time to pick out your moves is so much fun to do. It's like all slow-mo, and you're like, whoa, this looks so sweet. Or you're playing as Tifa, and she's doing like a cool like backflip or something, and she's just like all slow-mo doing like a cool kick, and you're like, yeah, Tifa. Which, by the way, Tifa, I love you, Tifa. Tifa forever. Tifa, my lady. Anyway, sorry about that.
What?
But yeah, so again, I like the combat. I think it feels really good. It's really gratifying. But we'll kind of talk about some of the reasons maybe later on why it's not perfect, but I really enjoy it. The story, again, we kind of talked about at the beginning. I consider it a highlight. I think the main storyline of Final Fantasy VII is really compelling, and I really wish we could have kind of moved further along in that, because when you were doing the actual story stuff in the game, it felt like that was the real game to me. Like that was like this is the meat and potatoes of the game, and I just wanted to move forward on that as much as possible, because I think it's one that still holds up, and the little layers they've added on top of it make it even more interesting and compelling in ways that the old game couldn't as much, just because of the visual representation of it. It's great. I love it. It's super cool. Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. Happens every once in a while since I started playing the game. Oh, anyway, keep going to the highlights. Okay, environments. I want to talk about the environments a little bit. The main environments that you go into for the story missions all look incredible. The detail in some of these places looks so good. You are walking around, again, kind of story spoiler-ish, but I'll try to keep it as broad as possible. But some kind of like maybe one of the bad guys' places, and you kind of look around and you're like, wow, there's a lot of opulence here, or this looks like really indicative of like the evil Shinra Electric Company. That sort of stuff's great. The bar, like your main like Seventh Heaven, that looks good. And some of those like areas I really enjoyed looking around, because those environments were fun to like just explore a little bit in a 3D space. And for someone who played a little bit of Final Fantasy VII when I was a kid, it's kind of fun to see what these things look like when you actually get to like go into them, or they're highly detailed, or like the arena stuff is really interesting. I think those environments look really good. Now let's move over to the shortcomings, because unfortunately this game does have a few in my eyes. Well, I talked about the character models and some of the environments looking good and some of the combat looking really nice. Some of the textures and the texture pop-in and some of the background stuff looks real bad. Like astonishingly so, where it's like you see like a backdrop of like the city when you're really high up climbing somewhere, and it just looks like a flat, like a 2D like pasted image that looks really bad. Or like some of the textures on a lot of the inanimate objects don't look completely finished, and I'm not really sure why that is. It does hurt me, because it's like the characters look so good, and some of the stuff, like some of the boss fights and stuff, look so amazing, like they look so cool, and then some of these places look like they were a complete afterthought. And, you know, kind of jumping back to what I was talking about with the story, the side quests in this game are desperately simple, so painfully so. It really hurts, and it pads out the game, and they are completely optional. The problem for me is when I'm like playing the game and they kind of want you to do side quests, I start thinking, all right, do I need to do these side quests to get stronger for later? And if I don't do them, I get chastised by my team members. But at the same time, maybe a minute ago they were saying we need to get to this person they've captured, we need to go save this person, but they're like, but maybe we should take some time and do all these side quests. It's like, what? I don't know what to do. And it would be different if the side quests had any amount of fun in them, because most of the time it is just like, go here, press a button, or go here, fight a thing, then come back. It's really unfortunate, and I wish that they could have like taken this opportunity to really like go crazy with it in a fun way, because I think you could do a lot of different things with these characters, or add on different little side quests that were kind of story based, where you were getting to know these other characters a little bit more than you might not otherwise. So yeah, and they tend to feel like they add to the padding of the game, but there's also padding in other ways, where they might take a small idea that was in Final Fantasy VII and blow it out to like this puzzle. And you're like, why am I doing this? And it takes so long. Or there's certain story moments in the game that aren't from the first game, that's fine, but they feel so inconsequential, where you just kind of play through a level and it's like it almost feels like filler in an anime for my fans who like anime like that kind of stuff, where it's so frustrating because you're playing and you're like, this is such a, like, it feels like such a waste of time. And you're like, oh, we did all that and it doesn't matter, and we'll never talk about it again, which is really frustrating. And to add on to that, there are two missions in particular, two main story missions, where you have to kind of traverse different areas that are like, you have to get from one sector to another sector, like sector H to G or whatever it is, and they're such long slogs of just like trying to find your way around this very specific path and fighting these like enemies that aren't that great. Man, it hurts because this game's got such high highs but then like really low lows, and sometimes I had to like force myself to keep playing the game, which is unfortunate because I think it has such a strong showing here and there throughout, especially in the beginning, so it kind of hurts in that way too. I do want to talk about it does feel a little tedious sometimes too to manage your characters. They add this new mechanic where your weapons actually get their own kind of armor and kind of weapon sphere type things in them where you can activate different nodes on them to make them more powerful. That stuff's fine. I didn't really find it to be super compelling though, insofar as like making me want to rush back there when I got enough, I think it was SP or something, skill points to put into being like, oh, I have 5% more damage. That kind of stuff. It felt like kind of boring stat upgrades. And then to make that even worse, materia. Materia is something that Final Fantasy VII is no stranger to, but my problem in this game is that you get materia, you'd equip it, and that was fun and fine, and it kind of made sense. They got stronger over time as you use them. That's great. But unfortunately, your party members would swap out kind of frequently, especially like a third party member, and it would get annoying because you would just get done equipping somebody with something, and then they'd leave the team, and then you try to pull that materia from someone else, and they'd be like, oh, are you sure that person still has the materia? And you're like, well, I'm not sure when they're coming back, so yeah, I'm going to. And then they would show up again, and you're like, oh my gosh. So re-equipping materia and kind of allocating your skill points to the new weapons you get, or whatever else that comes up, it felt a little tedious and a little time consuming. Again, kind of leading more into the padding, which I felt a lot in the game, because if I was doing that on top of being in a mission that I was just so bored and over with, it did not help at all. I was like, oh no, you're killing me. And unfortunately, for as colorful as this game can be in certain spots, the missions that bother me the most are the ones that are just like brown and gray. And I think that's just a problem with the fact this game is set primarily in the very first chunk of Final Fantasy VII. And maybe that's a spoiler to people, but you don't really get to leave Midgar in this game. You don't. So there's so much more to Final Fantasy VII than just Midgar, and being stuck there feels limiting, and I really wish we could have like progressed the story and maybe done like a halfway point of Final Fantasy VII where you like left Midgar, but there's still a chunk of the game to go explore, as opposed to being kind of stuck in the slums, or what I'm going to be calling it from now on, Final Fantasy VII #slumming it, or Final Fantasy VII Remake slumming it. I think that's kind of the first portion, which oh, I'm sorry about that. That keeps happening. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. There you go. That's kind of the shortcomings that I see there, which is sad because like there's so many moments that feel like such positive things to me. Which kind of getting to it, I do want to talk about something now, getting full spoilery, that has been bothering me for quite a while. Ever since I started this video, I'm sorry. I got to talk about him. I got to talk about Sephiroth. Okay, so Sephiroth, my boy, he's looking great, by the way. He's looking fantastic. He's got like a foot on Cloud. His hair's never been more luscious. A lot of people talk about the ending of this game, and I want to talk about it here. So, for people who know Nomura, Kingdom Hearts-ish, this game ends very Kingdom Hearts-like, and I'm okay with it, because if they hadn't ended it the way they did, it would have been just you guys driving off into the sunset. Okay, but instead here you fight a bunch of weird, kind of shadowy boss monster things, and then end up fighting Sephiroth one-on-one for a little bit, and then with the rest of the team. The shadowy creature things, that's straight up Kingdom Hearts, whatever, I didn't really care about it. But when we got to the actual Sephiroth fight, that was great. The music kicked in. It was like, oh my gosh, you needed to have this boss like at the end of this game, because it would have been so underwhelming if we would have been teasing Sephiroth the whole time and we never got to fight him. However, I understand a lot of people don't like the fact that you fight Sephiroth here because it doesn't happen in the original game. I get that, but like I'm just happy that we had anything there, personally. So I see it as both like a positive and a negative, like with the Shadow guys, but like Sephiroth was like, oh my gosh, which I really enjoyed that. And using Ifrit, like who my favorite summon, and I know there are others, but Ifrit to fight him was just excellent. I really enjoyed that. It was so good. I was like, yes, kill him. And having your teammates show up to fight alongside you was really great. But yeah, I love I love Sephiroth. I think he's really cool, and I wanted more of him in this game, and you get a little bit, but I'm just really hoping that his inclusion in the game in the future, in the other games, will be more significant, even more so than the original game. And that's just for me.
Let us defy destiny together.
I'm kind of thinking about getting away from doing like pure numbers on these things, because I feel like it's kind of unfair of me to slap a number on something. So it's going to kind of come down to what I've said to you. Does this sound good enough for you to get it? I think most people who are watching this have probably already bought it and beaten it by now. But for someone in the future, if you're like not sure if you want to get it, I would say, you know, it's easier to stomach at a lower price point. The budget is there. There's a lot of things to like about this game. The characters, the summons, some of the areas you go to, the combat, I think is all great. It hurts because there's so many horrible side quests, and some of the graphics on some of the stuff look completely unfinished, and it feels like this game is padding out to try to make it one part of 4 or 5 or whatever it's going to be when this is all said and done. So yeah, those are my thoughts, as brief as they can be. Final Fantasy VII, a lot to talk about, and I know I kind of crushed it into something smaller, but I just didn't want to go on and on about it. But basically what I'm trying to say is Sephiroth is the best, and I like Sephiroth so much. And they have some crazy boss fights in this game, but Sephiroth is easily the best. A little Sin Harvest action. Oh baby. Oh yeah. I love it. Reminds me again of Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, Kingdom Hearts, you see what I'm doing? Yeah, but... So yeah, I would love to know, though, what you guys thought of the game, seriously, because a lot of people probably played it already, and they want to talk about it. I want to hear what your thoughts are. Please let me know in the comments, or tweet at me. I'm at JimmyGood013. Please hit me up, or at GoCritical. You can just tweet at the official account too. But yeah, I appreciate you guys listening. Let me know if you enjoy this format, a little more kind of review and discussion. So please let me know. And to anybody who makes it this far, guess what? You're getting a virtual hug from me. Aha, I'm giving you a hug. Look at that. If you wanted it, but if you didn't, then I take it back. That's a goo. It's a G-U-H. It's a hug backwards. If you guys want to support us, you guys know where to do it. YouTube, Twitch, Patreon, all that stuff. But just you being here, this is the best. You guys do not have to do any of that stuff. Just you being here with us, being here with me, I appreciate it the most. Oh, I appreciate it so much. Thank you. And until next time, all I need you to do is remember this: to adapt and overcome. Da 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 da. Bam 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 bam. Da 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 da. That's pretty good, right?